Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new episode of this podcast. This week, I was given the wonderful opportunity to be able to bring on my coach again. We talked about lots of things to do with starting out businesses, understanding marketing, understanding how to tackle your competitors, and just had a good old chat and natter. So if you enjoyed this video and took some value from it, I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. And thanks for coming back. Hope you had a fantastic Christmas and New Year, and I'll see you very, very soon.
Do you know, we'll just start with, I don't know what to describe myself as. I'm an author. I have a social media presence. I have a podcast. I have two podcasts, really. I have one where I talk to guests and a kind of commentary podcast where I commentate on events, like just whatever I hear in the news, and I just give my opinion on it. And that seems to do quite well on YouTube at the moment. And as you know, I have a strong presence on TikTok. And I've written a book. I coach people. So I think this is one of the great things that I've seen change in my life is once upon a time, you were one thing, that was it. You know, there was never this, you could cross over and do lots of multiple things. Whereas with the age of the internet, you could start defining yourself. You could describe who you wanted to be, and as long as you put those habits into practice, it was fine. Whereas like I remember as growing up and stuff like that, you were always put in one box, whatever your skill set is. It was never unusual back then, especially in the kind of theatre side of life, that actors or actresses would have a great singing voice, or great singers could be fantastic actors. You didn't get the crossover like you do now. And and there used to be this thing that people would say, it was best to be just known for one thing. Whereas now with the internet, you can dictate however complex you want the world to see you as being. And most people recognize that lots of people have different skill sets and lots of people do different things. And as you know, I have clients all over the world now, so they don't care what I'm doing in the UK. They care what I'm doing when I'm talking to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for the time. And, I wanted to bring you back on because I think it's great because you've been very important and very established within my growth for the year that we've had between discussing publicly. And I think, just building on the point you were just talking about, I think it's a very important metric to talk about because there's a lot of people, especially now as we're in a new year, who would just assume, oh, I used to do that job, or I'm doing this job and that's the only thing I can ever do, right? I mean, I think that's the main thing. And, we'll get into kind of my progression a little bit in the company's progression as well, but what kind of advice or what input would you give to people who... Because I imagine there's going to be a sector of people who don't necessarily want to do the job that they're in. They don't exactly, maybe they want to go and do their own thing. Maybe they want to start a social media page. They want to start a fitness page, whatever. They want to do something else that they're not currently doing. I mean, what, from your own experience with you doing the fallacious, sets of things that you do, would you say to people and, suggest to people that they look to achieve and they look to do?
The first thing that always I tell everyone is you have to be honest. And when I say honest, I mean absolutely no bullshit. There's no point. I remember many, many years ago, and this is how long ago, it would have been about 97, 98. I think it was on TFI Friday. And they were talking about a lady called Mel C, who was a member of the Spice Girls. And she was very clear when she was young that when she grew up, she wanted to be famous. That was it. She wanted to be famous, right? And I don't think she's the only person I've ever heard who is famous that said that. But the important thing about that is defining what you want to be, and don't lie to yourself. So if you want to just be rich, well, then it's just a metric of figuring out how to get the best amount of money for the hours I put in. And then be prepared to work 80 to 100 hours a week achieving that. If you secretly desire that you have some craving to be famous, well, then there's now more than ever, there's 101 ways of doing that. But it's people, they create images or pictures and scenarios of what they want, but they base it from if only, but what if? You know, it's like, if I won the lottery, well, that's the chances of that happening are literally zero. You know, and people, you know, I've heard people who you know, they say, if I won the lottery, and you're like, well, when did the last time you play the lottery? I don't play it, but they have a what if scenario in their head of what they would do if they won the lottery, but they don't even buy a ticket. And it's these illusions that we create. And so for anybody who's wanting to do anything or change anything, the thing I try and get everybody that I work with focused on is be really brutally honest with yourself, what you want and why you want it. Because if you can't define why you want it, why it's really bloody important to you, you're never going to double down and do the work to get it done. It's, you know, and you got to look at these things like, you know, like I'll just put myself on the pedestal for criticism, if you like. I have a couple of podcasts now. The first one is because I just like talking to other people. And of course, I'd love it to blow up and that to be my full-time job. Why wouldn't I want that? I love doing the podcast. If I could just do that, that'd be great. The reason I have another podcast where I just talk about things that are going on in the day-to-day world of sport, politics, and everything, because I just have an opinion and I like the sound of my opinion. In a very narcissistic manner, I just like the sound of my own opinion, so I share it with the world, because there's all these platforms you could do it on. And again, you and I have discussed this before. There is always a business strategy behind these things because they cost money.
Yeah, even if that's not necessarily like tangible money, it's time related to money, right? It's that time money dynamic. And it's about understanding that if you're spending time on anything or you're spending energy on something, that's going to cost you money, right? It might not directly cost you money, but what could you be doing instead of doing that thing that is going to cost you money? And I think it's a very important point, because a lot of people, especially when they start out, and especially when I started out, they just see money as a transactional thing. They're like, okay, I have money or I don't. I need money to live, I don't. But what they don't also appreciate is the time and the energy that they have is actually the stronger resource that we should focus on optimizing and using correctly, because otherwise you can make more money, right? Like, you can just make more money. There's always going to be a certain balance that you always have to have between I can work and I have energy and I have time, and I have to rest and I need to relax and I need to sleep and I need to, etc. And everyone's balance to that is different, and everyone's quote unquote North Star when it comes to that is always going to be different. But I think that the main thing that, especially I started, as I say, when I started my business and when I was starting to really gain some traction, was really understanding that time is the biggest resource. And I think, you know, it leads on nicely to my next question, which was going to be, you know, if you recall back, say, a year ago, were you, to an extent, were you surprised with how the growth was? Because for me, I know we had a conversation probably about a year ago to the day nearly, where we were talking about where I would be, what I was going to do, etc., etc., etc. And I still found it very kind of like, yeah, okay, you know, in theory, yes, but I don't think I'm actually going to get it for whatever reason, because it seemed it, you know. And I've had the same thing with the goal setting that we've done for this year, where it feels very intimidating. Those goals, they feel very intimidating to get to, because they are quite a leap from where I currently feel like I am.
No, is my honest answer. I wasn't surprised, because I was the one that set the goals, and I did that for a reason, you know. So that's the thing, is like, so just finishing off on something I was about to say, which ties into something that I do with you a lot, is the reason you want things to work for you and to make money from them, to turn them into businesses, is driven by the fact you enjoy them. So the reason I love doing my podcast, and I'd love for them to be financially successful and viable, is just so I could do more podcasts, have more guests, do different formats, because I love doing them. The reason I do the social media is because I love doing it. all, as you know, 90% of my clients now come through TikTok. So I'm living, breathing evidence of how it works. But there's a lot of work that goes in the background, which you're aware of, that took months, if not years, to build up to get to those levels. So going back to you is when you and I sit down and do the coaching sessions, I'm giving you specific targets on what I know about you. And I often explain to you when we're coaching and stuff, I don't know how you do something, but I do know what you're good at. And whenever your mind is wandering and you're worrying about things and you're worrying about what direction Brunton Media is going and where you're going to take it, I always just bring you back to focus on what you're good at. Just focus on your clients, focus on how you get your clients. That's the thing that you do that I can't explain, but you do it exceptionally well. And I've said to you, you do it better than anyone I see, right? So I don't come up with a magic wand solution. I just get you to focus on what you do really well, what drives you, what inspires you, what motivates you, what you love doing. And whenever, again, going back to what we were talking about a second ago, because it relates to this, is the mistake that people make is they try to do and be things they're not. It's like, I seem to be like a stuck record at the moment about, but I'm a bit of a mouthpiece. I have a lot to say. So I do it.
And I think it comes back to understanding that that's okay, right? Like if you talk
exactly
a lot and you are good at what you are, it's not you necessarily being egotistical, so to speak, because a lot of people
it's
would.
What excites me, it's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah. Because the perception would be, because you say you're good at something, or because you believe you're good at something, you're up your own arse or you're egotistical. I think, and we've talked about this before, but there's a quite fine line or quite a blurred line, sometimes, depending on who you are. But from my experience, there's quite a grey line between confidence and ego, or an egotistical person. And for me, it's different to you, and for someone else, it'd be different, etc. as well. So where that line is, right? So some people, I may say I'm confident, but then someone else may say, "Oh, you're egotistical."
Yeah, no, someone else. One person's confidence is another person's arrogance, right? But both can be typically terms of perception from someone else's point of view. Sometimes we say that people are arrogant don't have confidence, where sometimes the most arrogant people are the most confident. And that confidence comes from arrogance. It's whether or not there's any humility in that person at the same time. And if that person doesn't have any humility, they'll be confident and arrogant even when they're out of their depth, because that's just who they are as a person. And the thing that you and I discussed a lot, and it's the thing that I focused on, is double down on what you enjoy doing, because enjoying something is always going to get you the best results. You know, because you've helped me a lot. There's a lot of things technically I just don't get, and I don't spend too much time trying to figure out how to do things. I'll just phone you up, do a video call with you, and say, "This is fucked. Sort it out." And you've given me links to things, and I look at it, and it's like there's like 10 hours of learning there, and I couldn't give a shit about it. And I don't waste my time trying to be somebody I'm not. Obviously, because you and I spend a lot of time working together on various different things, that there are things that I've been dragged through and had to learn. Some things I do willingly with a lot of enthusiasm. Some things it's because it's gone wrong and I have half an hour to fix it. So it's like speed learning. But I know I'm not a technophobe, but I'm not a tech nerd by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't have an interest in that. It's not what I have a desire to do. Like you tried to get me to use a new piece of software because I asked you for advice on how to make thumbnails and videos and stuff like that. And after a few hours of tutorials on it, I was just like, no, I'm not going to do it, because I was bored. I was bored to tears. And there's probably better ways I could learn how to do it. But ultimately, it's not essential for me to get by in what I'm doing. And the thing that a lot of people make a mistake of doing is focusing, they know what they want, but they don't double down on what they're good at and enjoy doing. And the best thing you can do is, if you're not the person that's good at that, get someone else to do it. Now, that's not always easy, because sometimes that costs money, you know, and when things cost money, that can be a problem. But you and I talk about this a lot with my social media when I'm doing my little videos on my phone. In terms of video quality, they're done off a phone, but I'm not selling digital media. People are only interested in my voice and in what I say. So it doesn't matter how I look. I can look like shit. Nobody cares.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that's not what.
Exactly. I mean, we had this conversation the other day, wasn't it? Because we were talking about, you know, do you need production quality to make social media work for you? Does it help? Yes, in certain contexts and in certain fields, of course. But it's not an essential unless you are a digital marketing agency or a video production company or something that kind of is tied towards that craft, right?
No, that's it. If you're doing a 30-second audio on accounting, you can be very short, sharp, and sweet. Now, if you want to do a 1-minute audio or a 5-minute video for YouTube, you're probably going to want to put in some sort of digital media slideshow that's interesting and gets the message across, as opposed to a PowerPoint presentation. So it's a lot of it is like, you know, you and I talk about this a lot, understanding what your audience tune in for.
And also understanding who that audience is. You know, it was interesting. I was on LinkedIn just at the turn of the year, and I was just curious what people were consuming. And this is something I would recommend to marketers or people who are looking to start marketing or etc. Go onto platforms with the specific activity or the specific goal or the specific drive to just look and consume. And what I mean by that is not sit and binge watch YouTube, because I think there would be a sector that would be like, oh, I'll just binge watch YouTube. When you look, you're looking for trends, you're looking for things, you're trying to understand who the people you're trying to talk to, and what are their connection points, right? So what content are other people creating? What's worked for other agencies similar to yours? What has worked to maybe if you don't have an agency yet, okay, fine. What agency do you want to create, and then research other agencies. What content do they create? How do they create? How do they nurture leads? How do they get leads, etc. And I think the main thing that I would say is, like, marketing is this massive thing that a lot of people don't understand. Would you say that still? I think it's so many people still don't get it.
I think one of the things, and you and I have discussed this before, is people go to places like Instagram and YouTube and TikTok to understand marketing. But the people that are doing the best on that are going on Google, Reddit, and things like that to see what questions people are asking. So, I'll stick with accountancy. I don't know why that popped in my head originally, but I'll stick with it. If you're an accountancy agency, you want to know what questions people are asking about accountancy. Just literally go to Google or Reddit and say, accountancy problems. How do I solve accounts? What are my tax returns? Think of 10 questions to do with accountancy that you think are commonly asked, and then put them into Google and Reddit, see what other suggestions they come up with, and see which questions have the most answers on something like Reddit. Because what you think might be important isn't what people are asking.
Yeah, and that that's a really important point about YouTube specifically, but mainly just in content in general. Go and find out what the market actually wants from you, because yes, you should create content that you find enjoyable. Yes, you should find content that you enjoy doing, but you should also, if you're really looking to grow fast, or you're really looking to grow, or you're gaining attention, or whatever your metric is that you're really looking for, especially on YouTube, if you're trying to grow a channel, you need to create specific content that's going to be search relevant. So all of the videos with views on our channel, for example, are very search relevant. So what that means basically is people are going to search for those videos, right? They're going to, or related videos to that topic. A lot of the content we're creating lately isn't actually to build the channel at all on YouTube. It's in regards to growth stage. It's actually to just help our marketing and help our clients and help our customers understand what we do and how we do it. One of the things that we're looking to do this year is really start creating more search relevant content, because what people forget is YouTube is the second biggest search engine bar Google, who owns it. So you can search something on Google and you'll get video hits from Google directly that go directly to YouTube because they're in a symbiotic relationship because they are owned by the same company. But also, if you are topping that search result and you know how to SEO and you know how to rank and etc., then you can be in a very powerful position when you're specifically looking at video content. But the same could be true of blog content. The same could be true of just creating valuable content for LinkedIn, etc., etc., etc. Wherever your target is that you're putting your content, you need to establish that your audience is the deciding factor on whether it's good or not you. I would say, personally. And
if it's things like YouTube, you've got to look at what other people are doing and seeing if that relates to any of the research you found on things like Google and Reddit. But again, the other thing, like, you know, you and I, is one of the things that I talked to you about, which I've pointed out to you that you're very good at doing, is actually doing the work. You know, you set the goals and do the work. And it's amazing how often that people have great ideas, but they don't execute them. They don't follow up with the dirty work, the work that has to be done to produce a product. And you and I, like, often when we talk in terms of timelines. You know, there's a time frame to everything. And it's always typically what 6 months from now look like. And people don't understand that. And it's probably one of the things that it took me a while to understand why lots of people, you know, when you look at very successful business people and very successful businesses, particularly people in sports, is when they start looking at time frames and they start talking about a competition they're aiming for next year. You know, and it's just like, you know, the athletes being a big one. You know, they'll go from world champions to the Olympics, world championships to the Olympics, and there's often a 2-year gap. And everything in between that is really just seeing what medals they can pick up. But their goal is the Olympics. And after the Olympics, the goal will be the Europeans or the Worlds. And they're never focused on a goal next week or next month. The goal is always focused 6 months or a year from now. And big businesses do that. Successful businesses do that. You know, they, you know, ad campaigns, or when they're changing brands, or when they're bringing something new to the brand, they look at where they want it to be in, you know, if this is the launch date, where do we want it to be 6 months, 12 months after that? And how do we get it to the launch date? And a lot of people underestimate that. It's not that. The outcome that's important is what you're setting your targets of being. Because the rest will take care of itself.
And I think it's a really important point, especially when you start doing content, because there is not this magical moment where you suddenly make loads of money again, right? Or content or marketing in general suddenly works for you. It's a slow trickle. It's always a slow trickle. It always is. But what ends up eventually happening is once you're in, say, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, 11 months, 12 months, etc., once you're in that deep, you really are starting to understand what's known as your golden content or your golden ad. So you understand what audience really, really works. You understand what content and what about and what topics and how it's shot, or if it's a video, for example, or what the copy's like, etc. You know those metrics now. Okay, so you know what works, but also what you're doing is you're building up a larger and larger, warmer audience that will eventually, when it's the right time for them, not the right time for you, the right time for them to buy your product or service, and you'll be in their front of mind. And that's why we talk about front of mind marketing, because we want you think about whatever you do. So when someone, for example, I use Dave as the example, when someone thinks coaching, if Dave's done his marketing right, they should think Dave is a good coach and he works with these people. Okay, great. So if Dave's done his marketing right, that will be in his ideal customer's head. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow he's going to get 5 new customers. It might be 6 months. It might be a year. It might never happen. And that's the difference between, I think, one of the main things that a lot of marketers don't go out of their way to explain and don't go out of their way to talk about. And one of the things I try to explain as much as I possibly can to our clients is that, look, it's a process, firstly, but secondly, it's going to take time, right? Like it's not something we can just magically make you suddenly make loads more revenue overnight. Can we increase your revenue? Yes. Are we going to guarantee we're going to increase your revenue? No, absolutely not. Because the only way we're going to increase your revenue 100% is if I'm going to pay you. That's the only way I can guarantee 100% that I'm going to increase your revenue. Simple as that.
Yeah, this is the thing though, that there are no guarantees, and people become fixated on wanting a particular outcome. And from one of the things I talked to you about is I often chuck in what ifs. What are the other options? What are the other avenues that could be explored? And I don't do that because I'm trying to shit on anything. I do that to open the mind up to possible avenues, to take blinkers off, because you can become so focused in one direction that it's all you allow yourself to do. And actually, say you're a business trying to increase a revenue stream, you can go so focused in one direction that that's the only way to make revenue, or that's the only way to create more customer input, where customers come to you, that you ignore something really simple that runs parallel with that. and we're all guilty of doing it. We can all be incredibly guilty of doing that, because we don't have somebody to bounce off to ask us about our ideas. Why are you not doing this? Explain to me why that won't work. And what other opportunities are there? What other options? Who else is looking to do something? Whenever somebody says to me, and I'll pull this from a recent client, we were just talking about they have a full-time job, but they want a second source of income, and you're immediately caught into two avenues. You either train to do something new that you can then turn into a second source of income after a period of time. And I got this person to look on all of those websites like Fiverr, People Per Hour, and see what freelance work is out there that they could possibly train into. Or the other one was just like, go and see who wants a job as a waiter or waitress, and learn people skills off YouTube. Go on all the charisma channels, learn how to be really good with people and get great tips, with that. And it's which one do you want? And somebody's like, yeah, but I don't want to be a waiter or a waitress. I'm not saying to you to be that. I'm telling you to actually learn people skills. And it's the best place to test them, because from that, you might get an excellent job in sales. You might get an excellent job in PR. You might get an excellent job in marketing. But if you can't learn people skills, you're not going to be good at anything that requires you talking to people. So go on YouTube, learn all about charisma, and go and put it in practice and get paid at the same time. And it's a second source of income, because whilst you're doing that, you never know who you might meet. You never know who else is looking for somebody, and you happen to flip their switch because of the way you handled the situation, because of how you presented yourself. And a lot of what you're trying to get people to explore is options. Like going back to something we were talking about earlier, when people they don't define their goals or why or what they want. And a good example is the amount of people say, I'd love to live by the sea, right? And what do you mean? You want to live in a sea town where you can walk to the sea within 5 minutes? Or do you want somewhere with a sea view? Do you mean a particular area? Because if you want a sea view, you can live anywhere in the UK to a degree, but do you actually mean, no, you a particular apartment or a particular house that overlooks sandbanks? All right, so you're a millionaire, bro. Or do you care if you're 20 miles down the coast? Is it just the seaside you want, or does it matter if you're, like I said, a 5-minute walk away? Because people are like, they don't define exactly what it is they're chasing. And that makes it then very difficult to plan how to get it done.
What you were talking about when it comes to communication skills, because for me, for those who don't know, I worked in Greggs for 2.5 years. Before that, Subway, did that for 3 years, etc. And the reason why those jobs, and I always tell people when they start out, especially as they go into leaving uni or they're leaving college or they're leaving school, go get a retail job for at least 1.5 years, because it will train you to deal with every single kind of customer that you're ever going to deal with in your entire life. You're going to have to work in a team. You're going to have to work with people who you don't necessarily agree with their views, but that's okay. You're going to have to work with people or customers that are unhappy for unknown reasons, completely unknown, and for no reason outside that. They just walked through the door in a bad mood, and everything in between. And the point there is the reason why, if you're looking to do anything related to sales, anything to do with communication, anything to do with marketing, anything at all really, is you have to be able to know how to handle and deal with people and be able to articulate to people and be able to, because things are going to go wrong, right? Whether I'm the best marketer in the world or Dave is the best coach in the world or whatever, doesn't matter. It's still going to go, things are still going to go wrong. Right, like things are still going to be misunderstood, things are going to be misconstrued, etc. Especially when you're talking about like non-voice related communication, right? Like sending emails or etc. And it's something which you need to be very careful with how you go about and etc. And you need to make sure that you always double check with your client or your customer that they're happy. You're happy to move forward. Are you happy? Something that we do, unless customers ask us to, is we never lock them in. We never lock them into a retainer because for a lot of customers it would feel like they're in a cage, they're in a box, they can't get out of it, they can't change, it's not fluid. And for me it doesn't make any sense. Yes, I have more security if they're locked into a year retainer or locked in for 6 months or 3 months, but that's all an illusion in the first place, to be honest with you, because if they want to leave, it's very simple, they just don't continue to pay the bill. Right, and then it escalates, and it's about how you handle that relationship. But the point I'm making is, if you never lock people into retainers are incredible. So retainers are, as a concept, just briefly, if you can build a retainer model into any business, it will be the future. It will be the thing that allows you to scale your business because it gives you
and do you know what
consistent cash flow.
The best retainer model? Subscriptions. Sky, Netflix, all of them. They have you on a subscription, or as other people call it, a retainer. And that's where the model comes from. But also, I just wanted to go back to something about dealing with people. Is one of the reasons I often tell, like that I talk about waitresses and things like that, is because, like you, I've done lots of customer-facing jobs. And although on the whole, most people are very nice, very reasonable, there are a lot of shitty, unreasonable, unrealistic people out there. And that's what you've got to learn to navigate. One of the things you identify very quickly after a period of time is who is worth your effort and who isn't. And that sometimes you can do the best job in the world and someone won't appreciate it and it's not going to get you anywhere. And you can't take that personally. And that's something that people lack when it comes to people skills, is understanding how to navigate around those so you're unaffected by them, because it's not going to change. But if you can learn how to deal with people and how to change someone's mindset or change the tone of a conversation, it's an incredible people skill.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's
a valuable one.
Yeah, and it's something that you'll use time and time. I mean, a lot of the conversations I've had with friends has been like, are you escalating the situation or decreasing it? Decreasing the situation. And I think it's important to establish that, firstly, not everyone is going to be your tribe, not everyone's going to, as you say, connect with you, but also that sometimes saying no or look, I think we've made a mistake here, or I don't think that we should continue our working relationship for whatever reason, that's okay, right? And to understand that that's fine, and to understand that that's it, that they're actually going to have more respect for you as a business owner or as a person, or in general, they're going to have more respect with you if you're honest. And building back to what you said at the start about being completely transparent and honest to them with yourself.
Yeah, well, like I said, one of the things you and I talk about a lot, and I talk a lot about this both business and privately, boundaries. This is what I offer, this is what I do, this is how much it costs. Okay. And when somebody says, oh, can you? No, I can't do it like that. This is what I offer, this is how much it costs, this is what I do. All of my free content is on the internet. And those boundaries is because the minute you give, you're not respecting what you want. And it's the same for any business. You've got to be very clear about your pricing structure. You've got to be very clear what's on offer. And it's very difficult for businesses, especially at this time or when you're starting out, if you're struggling, to not just want the money. But you start setting a precedence that those customers, it doesn't matter what you say, will expect that every time. That's just how it is. And that's the same in life, in personal relationships, friendships, siblings. If you don't have those solid boundaries about what you accept and what you don't accept, they're always going to behave the way they want to behave with you. And not everybody has good personal boundaries of how you should treat other people.
Yeah, and it's and it's something that I would say you need to learn as a person, never mind business, but definitely in business, because and it comes with your own self-motivation, your own self-esteem, and it's something that you need to work on if you're going to be in any way client-facing or customer-facing in general in a business, especially when you own it yourself, because a lot of people are going to say, I've had it, I'm sure Dave's had it, I'm sure everyone's had it at least multiple times a year. If you're lucky that this business is not very good, this person's not very good. My question is always, okay, well, why is that person articulating it that way, right? There's a difference between constructive criticism, which is, hey, by the way, I really like this, but I don't maybe like this, or this could be improved. Okay, great, fantastic, we love that, that's great, because then I can look to improve it and I can look to do it better. And just being vile or being mean or being horrible about someone else or someone else's business or someone else's skill or someone else's understanding of something, and not going about it in a specific way that is kind, right? Is saying we are better because that person's bad. I think it says a lot about a business if you go into a conversation saying why someone else is really bad, but you're not talking about why you're really good. And so let's play a theoretical scenario for now, and then there's another company who comes and says, this is why we can help you, this is why we are going to put your interest first, not we're going to try and badmouth the other competitor, so to speak, or the other person, because I think from what I've looked like, it's not, in my experience, it's not down to me whether the client wants to work with us or not. It's my job to say, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do, this is how much it costs, and then it's up to the client to choose whether they want that or not, and then if they want to continue that relationship.
Well, you and I have discussed this a lot over the years as well. Is one of the most important things is, are we a good fit?
And that could be nothing to do with your skill set. It could be person to person.
Yeah, that's it.
Unfortunately,
no, but it's true, isn't it? Unfortunately, in this world, there is no law that requires everybody to think that I'm great, and and there's no law that requires everyone to think that you're great, and there never should be, and it's all about dynamics, and it's all about how you can connect with people and with individuals, because whether it's like you with their marketing and their budgets and stuff, or it's me with coaching. It's, do they trust us? Do they trust me? Do they trust you? And if the answer to that is yes, okay, well then that's the first stage of we can do something together. But if the answer is just I'm not sure, well then you need to go away and think about it. You need to look at other people. You need to look at other options. You need to see what else is available to you. Because if you're not sure about me, if you're not sure about Brunton Media, it's never going to happen. But if you can trust us, I say, trust me as a coach, or trust you for Brunton Media. We are two separate things, by the way. Then we can have a conversation to see what we can do. There's still no commitment to costs. There's no commitment to working together, but we can now have a conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to establish that as well, but also, people have asked me, how do you, some people think I have a too interpersonal relationship with our clients, and for me, you can't, in my opinion, right now in 2022 especially, you can't have a business if you don't have a very personal connection with those business owners. You can't. If you don't have those, if they don't wholeheartedly trust you and you're not close with them, and they, and they come to you with problems, or they feel like they can talk to you about anything, then we can't. Well, I can't work with that person, because for me,
I think funeral directors are an exception to that rule.
Of course, but I think it's really important when it's in marketing specifically.
I don't know why that popped in my head.
Anyway,
I don't need to trust a funeral director.
No, I
But
don't.
no, it's
I think it's really, really important though that you do keep relationships, and keep them really strong and keep them important, and they're really important. Even if that means sometimes giving people refunds, even if that means sometimes doing more work than you're technically getting paid for, even if that technically means going the extra mile for your clients or client, it will always pay dividends from my experience from karma or in general, not even necessarily related to that client, but if you always try to do the best that you can for every situation you're in, then and you work hard, it will, in my opinion, it will all work itself out eventually. But it's not up to you to decide how it's going to work itself out. It will, but it's not up to you how, because it won't work the way you think it's going to.
I think there's a lot of truth in that, but it depends on the industry you're in. So, it's like when I look back at, when I used to work in car dealerships on the front desks and stuff like that, and you're booking customers in, you have to have a very strict protocol of what you expect that customer to do. And if the customer doesn't like that, well, then tough, go and use another dealership. Obviously, you can't sell it to them like tough, go and get your car fixed at another dealership. But you can't have people just not following the basic principles of we need your car at this time and we need it for this long, and this is how much it's going to cost. So you have to have very strict boundaries. Now, currently, that doesn't apply to you and I in any way, shape, or form, because the businesses that we run require us to be flexible around clients. And again, this comes down to, like when we were talking earlier about research, if you're thinking of going into an area of business or you want to know more about your business, research what customers are talking about. What are they complaining about? Now, you might find that what they're complaining about isn't something you can change. I remember years and years ago with courtesy cars. Everybody wanted a courtesy car until you told them they had to insure it themselves. Well, that my insurance company is going to charge me or something. Well, yeah, but we're not putting every single customer on the company car policy. That's it. We couldn't afford that sort of. Could you imagine saying to an insurance company, "Oh yeah, we want to be able to insure anybody that borrows a courtesy car, any age. We don't know anything about them. We don't know how many points that they'd sell you the policy. You'd bankrupt the business, but they'd sell you the policy. So, and so everybody wanted a courtesy car until they had to insure it themselves. Then suddenly it turned out they were happy to just get a lift home, or they could just drop it off and walk into town. And this is so you've got to do as much research as possible, but also be realistic about what you can fix.
No, of course. I mean, there's, when I say you should go the extra mile, there is also a boundary line there, right? Like, and it's you that decide that boundary line, right? Like, if you think doing an extra hour or two on an edit to make it absolutely perfect for your client, but you're not really going to charge them for it, or you're going to give them a discounted rate on it, or etc., that's up to you, right? Like, at the end of the day, it's your bottom line that you need to make sure that you get paid by. But I think there's a larger scale of things you need to think about when it comes to, especially a creative field or a very interpersonal related field. I'm not going to Dave to buy milk and eggs, for example, right? Like, it's not that transactional.
No.
That's what I mean when it's a bit more malleable, I think would be the correct term.
But you've seen over a period of time when you and I have had conversations, and I've let coaching clients go. You're like, why have you let them go? They're not working. They're not working hard enough. We have our chat, whether it be weekly, fortnightly, or monthly, and it's what have you done about what you're trying to achieve since then? Oh well, but okay, and I can let a couple of sessions like that slide, but then ultimately, and as you know, I'm not the most affordable coach. It's but I can't work with people if they're not interested in working with themselves. And I know lots of people who will just take your money, and I've never been able to do that. And and you can bear witness to the fact that I've cancelled clients and said, no, you need to find somebody else, because we are not working together. And ultimately, regardless of how good I am or I'm not at what I do, it only works if you actually are prepared to put in some investment into who you are and what you say you're trying to achieve and what you want to do. And that doesn't matter if it's they've come out of a relationship breakup or whether they're just trying to get their business on a footing. It's what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to do? And you and I, I've complimented you about this before, about setting goals, executing on plans. You're one of the best people I know at it. But there's a lot of work that goes into doing that. Then once we've discussed it, you've written up the plans, you've written up the goals, we've written up the targets, we've discussed them. And look, when we were talking on Sunday, and we went through that big list of notes I had on my phone about you, where are we with this, where are we with that, and all we were doing is a reflective period to see is that, you know what I mean? And when you look at that reflective and the things that you said, oh no, that's not relevant now, that's not relevant now, that's not relevant now, we need to revisit that, and that was the list from the last couple of months. If we were to look at lists, if I'd kept all those lists over, what is it now, nearly 18 months, is it? Yeah, we could write a book. It'd be a printable book, and it never stops. It never changes. It's always right. What's next? What's next? What's next? But I can't do any of that work. I can only bring you to the table to be accountable.
Yeah. And I think it's important about understanding what role your coach has, or what role your marketer has, or what role your content creator has, or your lawyer has, or your accountant has. Yeah. And also what you're willing to put in, because as you say, there's no, we say this with this certain sector of our marketing clients that maybe we don't create any content for. I'm like, look, okay, I can build the strategy, but the strategy is going to do absolutely nothing if there's no content to feed the funnel or feed anything. And you guys need to create the content, right? Like, you have to execute on the content. You have to actually create stuff, and it's hard work. There's a reason why I'm able to do it full time, because it is on its own a full-time job. Now the question really comes, how do you want to use your resources? You're either time rich or money rich. Okay, if you're time rich, do you want to allocate money or allocate time, if you're both, to both of the aspects that you're doing? So do you want some strategy, do you want some content? Okay, great. Then do you want to do the content side, do you want to do the strategy side, whatever. Again, it's about understanding what role is best suited to that person.
But that brings up another good point as well, which is something I probably discuss more in my business than you do, is when I sit people down and say, do you actually want any more work? Are you financially comfortable? Is everything going well? Because, and which comes back to the thing again, be brutally honest. Because anybody can earn, look, I don't care how low skill you are, you could have several jobs that all pay some form of tips, and you could make good money. Are you going to make 6 figures in a year? No, probably not. But you could probably be on an easy 50,000 by the end of the year, just by being really good at customer services, finding the best restaurants, the best jobs that give tips. Tips are the unspoken, the best sales jobs where you get easy markups, and you're literally looking at, but do you want to work 7 days a week? And most people say, no, not really. They barely want to work 35 hours a week.
12 to 15 hours a day, every day for 6 days or 7 days a week.
Yeah, because if you do, give it 2 years of making 50,000 a year, you'll soon know how to turn that into 100,000 a year.
Yeah.
But to maintain that, you might always be working that many hours. As look, as well as the podcast, as well as coaching, what do I also have? A full-time job. Yeah. I just work, and I like working. But it comes back to what we're saying: do things you enjoy.
And it's really important to establish that, but it's also really important, and I've said this to people I coach as well, when it comes to the marketing side of things. It's like, well, you will go from, especially if people are looking to go full time, you're going to go from working 12 hours or 15 hours a day or 9 hours a day or 10 hours a day, whatever you have as your metric, and then but that will be split across, say, a job, and then 4 hours for you, or 2 hours for you, or 2 hours on the business a day. Okay, so when you go full time, the only thing that's going to change is you're suddenly got, instead of 2 hours a day for you, you've got 10 hours a day for you. That's it. That's the only thing that changes. You're still going to work the same amount in regards to volume of hours, but it will all be on your own terms. It will all be for you. It will all be building this business for you. It will be all building your own thing, the thing that you're passionate about, the thing that you enjoy. And if it's the right thing, yes, there's points that's stressful, but the majority of it will feel, in theory, like you're not working. I mean, this is quite a grey area, because it really depends on what you're doing and how stressed you are, or related to stressed you are. But in most cases, yes. And the yardstick I always use is, what is my worst day now? Is that better than my best day when I was at Greg's, for example?
Yeah.
Okay, if that's true, then I'm winning.
And this is the thing, is like, when you say to people, when it comes to digital content and stuff, well, you need to create it. Well, I'm busy. Yeah. But if you want an online presence because you want your business to grow, you have to create the content. There's no way around it. And unless, because even if you pay for lots of adverts, what are they going to advertise? It's not how it works. If you want an online, and this is the thing that you and I bang on about, is people, there's commitments to taking on anything, and people need to understand what that means and what that looks like. And to give an example to anybody, it doesn't matter what the business is, whether you're talking about business or whether you're just talking about the type of person you would like to be in your own life, right? And I've done this exercise with you, I do this exercise with everybody, is you need to describe the person that you either want to be or the person that runs that business. Not what the business is, not what the business does. What is that person like? The person that runs that business, what does their Monday to Friday look like? What does their Saturday and Sunday look like? What is that person? What do they do? What are their habits? What are their routines? What do they commit to? What do they ignore? Are they getting into arguments with people on Twitter about stuff? Probably not. Are they watching hours of YouTube? Probably not. Are they flicking through Instagram? Probably not. Do they work 7 days a week? Not necessarily. They might have a very strict Monday to Friday regime. But what does that person look like? What are their values? What are their habits? What are their routines? What do they implement? How do they go about their day-to-day lives? How would they write a plan for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and 5 years? So once you've written down exactly what this person's like, you now know what you have to do.
Yeah, and take one step at a time. Okay, this person
it's definitely just one step at a time.
Okay, this person wakes up earlier than I currently wake up. Okay, work on that. Okay, this person goes to the gym. Okay, can start going to the gym. Okay, this person works more hours than I'm working. Okay, if you're currently working 6 hours, then go to 7 for a month. Okay, then go to 8. Okay, then go to 9, then go to 10. You don't just go from 6 to 15. It's not.
And then be brutally honest. Is this what you want?
I used to enjoy it.
And I this yourself, because I bang on about it all the time. I've been like a stuck record on this podcast. You got to be honest. You got to be honest about what you want and why you want to achieve it. Yeah. And then then all you can do is create the habits around it.
Yeah. I think we'll wrap up, but I think it's really important to establish why you're doing things, because when I had a job, I was like, I'm doing it for the money because I need to make money, and that's why I was miserable all the time. That's why I was this. That's why I was that. That's why I had mental health issues more and more of the time, because I wasn't doing things that made me fulfilled. I wasn't doing things that challenged me. I wasn't doing things that I found intimidating, and then as I grew to actually do them, I was like, well, actually, no, I can do these things. No, actually, people are behind me. People are going to help, and also there's nothing wrong with saying, sometimes. Actually, I don't know how to do this. Okay, cool. So it's a learning opportunity now. And just as we end off, I think it's a really important opportunity to remember that today is always a learning opportunity for tomorrow, and you're never a complete thing. You're never a complete package. You're never a complete. I'm as good as I'm gonna be. No, you're as good as you are today.
I'm gonna put a caveat. I'm going to attach a little edit to that.
Asterisks.
Yeah. So ignore so the phrase is like you need to learn new skills. No, double down on what you're good at. Be bloody brilliant. Be a master at what you're already good at, and then focus on your weaknesses. But people, like I said, there's reasons why I don't get heavily involved in technology, in trying to become the guy that fixes everything and knows how to do all of that, because it's not necessary. And it deflects from things that I'm really good at doing and things I really enjoy doing. Now there's things, sometimes I do have to bite the bullet and learn something new. Other times I have to pay for a problem to be fixed. But outside of that, it's, double down on your strengths, understand what they are. Be aware of your weaknesses. They always need to be improved. But don't over focus trying to improve your weaknesses at the expense of what you're good at. Be a master at what you're good at, because the areas that do the best in life are the niche areas.
Yep. 100%.
And you best, and if you really enjoy something and can be a master of an area that's a niche area, you're always going to be satisfied.
And for those people who would be interested in, seeing some of your work, hearing some of your daily motivation stuff, or just talking to you about potentially working with you, or hearing more about what you do, where's best for people to reach out, where people can see the content?
So on YouTube, if you want to listen to my podcast, it's the David Watson Podcast or the David Watson Extra. I have 2 podcast channels. On Instagram, it's Next Level Coach. On TikTok, it's Next Level Coach. And my website is davidwatson.life.
Thank you ever so much for the time, my friend.
You're welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much, guys, for taking the time and the energy to consume this piece of content. I hope you took value from it, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you had a fantastic start to your year. And I'll be back next week with a brand new interview with a brand new guest. So thank you ever so much for coming back and consuming, and I will see you very, very soon.